So we float this theory by you, Rick, based off of last night. So we were talking in the break that I went and saw Batman after the Sixers-Nets game last night. It's very dark, and I love villains. I think villains make the story, whatever the story is. I think if you have a very strong, compelling villain that has interesting human elements, it makes the whole story, the whole movie, the whole experience different. And they have great villains in Batman. And I thought last night in the NBA was a perfect example of when everybody's not getting along, when there's a little bit of tense energy in the building, even in a blowout, it's a must-watch situation.
Yeah. Agree, 1,000%. And I love the plot twist that we got last night. James Harden is now the villain. James Harden is now the guy who needs to prove that all of the things, he's the guy who's operating behind the scenes. We thought he was a good guy, but it turns out he's a double agent. He might be the bad guy. And Kyrie Irving, lo and behold, after a 50 spot against Charlotte, and then coming up big in this game and facing down what is now the villain in James Harden, I agree with you in that we need, whether in sports, in any league, in any sport, we need to have that guy that everybody is rooting against. I've just amazed by how quickly we've got this rivalry here. Normally it takes a certain amount of history, but I think it's where we are with stars moving around. But this role reversal where Kyrie Irving now looks like the good guy, and James Harden is the guy on the spot. I don't know that I've ever seen that happen in one single night.
Well, also, I don't want to react too much to the night because, as you said, like there's a plot twist. They go into Philadelphia and it's very tense and fans are booing and everyone's trying to come for Ben Simmons who isn't even on the court. And then the Nets end up blowing out the Sixers. Right. But I don't want to overreact to that because I believe that this Ben Simmons move, who, again, is not even playing yet, is for next year. I don't think that the Nets are contenders, even though there is some time left for them to get this rolling. There's just too much to overcome and too many pieces to fit.
I agree with that, although I would say that the whole picture when it comes to the postseason in the NBA is so fractured with every team. Every single team looks vulnerable. I mean, even the Milwaukee Bucks, who I've had from the beginning of the year as my favorite, and I expect them to go back and win another one, without Brook Lopez, they haven't been quite the same team. They've been kind of scuffling along. I believe they're just waiting until the postseason gets here. But still, they haven't looked like leaders day in and day out. And I could say that for every single team. So I agree with you in terms of the Brooklyn Nets having a longer runway. The idea that, hey, if we don't get it this year, Ben Simmons isn't going anywhere. Kyrie Irving isn't going anywhere. Like we can still build this and we can be better next season. But that said, it's wide open. So why not see how far you can get? Why not dismiss the idea that they could fall into winning a championship? I mean, honestly, did anybody at the beginning of last season have the Phoenix Suns going all the way to the finals? I don't think so. And yet, circumstances, injuries, all of a sudden they find themselves in the finals and having a shot at it. So I believe that the Brooklyn Nets are not looking at this as the be-all and end-all in terms of winning it this year. I agree with you there. But I also don't believe that they've completely dismissed based on what they have, that who better than us to take a run at it?
No, I agree with you with everything being wide open. I felt this way, started to feel this way a couple weeks ago at the All-Star break, where very rarely in the NBA, because of how star-driven it is and, you know, this movement to super teams or whatever, which I think is kind of exaggerated, but at the beginning of the season, we feel like we know who's going to be there at the end based off of the talent that is on the roster. This is a unique year, kind of similar to the NFL this year, where there's a lot of parity, and you don't usually have that in the NBA. There's probably 7 teams that if I told you right now they're going to win a championship, you couldn't really be outraged about it, and we don't normally have that in the NBA.
I agree, and it's honestly, it's why from the beginning of the year, I had the Suns and the Bucks doing it all over again because of the value of the experience of getting there and looking at those two teams and the age of their stars and the fact that I didn't think they were going to go anywhere. I didn't think they would be any worse than they were a year ago. And I don't know what I'm going to get from the 4 or 5 other teams that I could say are title contenders. And that essentially was the main reason that I have the Bucks and the Suns going back there and still have the Bucks and the Suns going back there. But we've got Chris Paul missing. If Chris Paul doesn't come back and isn't the same Chris Paul that he was prior to the injury, then that changes the Suns dramatically. And I do believe that the Bucks are compromised if they don't have Brook Lopez. The size question is going to be a question as far as their ability, especially on defense, to defend their title.
Ric Bucher on the herd, but thus Joy Taylor in for Colin Cowherd. So obviously it's the Lakers. We're here in Los Angeles. This is what it is. Steph Curry came out and defended Russell Westbrook. The family stuff aside, no one is justifying what's happening to his family. It is egregious. It's wrong. If you're doing that,
sure,
you're ridiculous. There's no excuse for it whatsoever. That aside, taking that out of it, because no one's excusing that. Mm-hmm. The reaction that has come for Russell Westbrook this year, to me, is a direct result of, one, not playing well. That's number one. The compensation that he is getting to not play well. The effect that he has clearly had on the court to a team that last year wasn't great, but certainly wasn't dysfunctional, and the year before that won a championship. But also animosity towards the media and towards fans whilst all of those other things being in place. So I do think fans have a right to be upset, but I also think having just a tiny little couple drops of accountability goes a long way in a situation that is very toxic.
I agree. Shows don't work very well, Joy, when the people on them agree on everything. I can't argue with anything that you said. Russ has always been combative. And that's the hardest part for me to kind of reconcile is now he's saying, you guys are being mean to me, that you can't be mean to me. I'm like, Russ, you've mocked and taunted opponents your entire career. You've mocked and taunted the media your entire career. You've always been that guy that has a chip on his shoulder and is going at everybody demonstrably. So now you're being called names and people are booing you and you're like, hey, that's too much. I agree with you with the family stuff, but Joy, I'm certain you've experienced this. Like the stuff that if you have any presence in the public eye, the stuff that people are willing to say and say they're going to do to you on social media, there are no boundaries on that. It's astonishing how bad it can get. But it comes with being in the public eye, and everybody understands that. So here's to boil down why Russell is where he is, and there's such hatred for him at this point, and I don't think that's too harsh of a word, is because of the expectation. An expectation is just a resentment waiting to happen. And there was massive expectation from put out there by Russell, put out there by LeBron, put out there by the Lakers. We're putting these 3 stars together, actually 4 or 5 stars together, 4 all-time greats, and we're going to go win another championship. And they haven't come close to that. And Russell is bearing the brunt of that. I have defended him because he's only playing this way we've always seen him play. But this other stuff is completely different.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rick. It's fine if we agree on everything. That's fine. It's all good. Appreciate you jumping on with us. That's Rick.
Every now and then.
It's all good. Wait, listen, it just means we're right. We can just tell each other how right we are.
Exactly.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.